Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? I always feel like there's this thing sitting inside of me where it's like, dude, if you don't make this decision right now, like, and you don't talk about this, or you don't say this, you're gonna literally explode.
Yeah.
So you're so perplexing to me because I like to me, I look at that and I go, how the fuck can a child actually do that? Right?
Yeah.
What was happening?
I felt like I just had to grow up. As soon as things happened with my mom and dad, I was like the child I was a sibling everyone looked to for strength and support.
Mm,
And so I just kind of grew up. I had to grow up. And I also had the wherewithal. Like even though I maybe didn't do like, you know, going back to that cigarette story, I did try to hit one of his cigarettes. I'm like, this burns my lips. It doesn't taste good. Why do people smoke? This is ridiculous. So like you know, I tried to try to do things that people would do that would like, be that what I would call it a rebellious thing as a kid. But I just realized that that was a waste of time and energy on my part, and that's not what I wanted to participate in. So I guess part of that is I just had to grow up. Like I just had to take responsibility for my life, regardless of what was going on around me. And so when recognized that these things that were happening inside my mom's new marriage, that were extremely unhealthy. I mean, I like, okay, they'll probably never watch this podcast or listen to it, but I remember getting in the car with my mom. Stepdad disappeared. At this point in time, I knew he was on drugs, and I'm talking heavy, like hardcore drugs, hallucinating, all that kind of stuff. Disappear for 2 days, like at least a day. On day two, my mom goes, "We got to go drive and find him." And the first place we went to was Venice Beach to try and see if he was somewhere on the streets in Venice Beach. Like that's not normal 15-year-old activity happening in someone's life.
totally.
So I was just like, after we found him, I said, "Mom,
On
like,
Venice Beach?
no, we didn't find him." I don't even remember. I think
Yeah.
he came home. I think he just came back to the house. I remember calling my dad, and I didn't really let him in on what was going on out of preservation for my mom. Um, but I just said, It's not good. It's not good." And I think my mom was talking to one of her really good friends up there, and she came down to visit, and she saw it wasn't good. And so with that, she's like, I said, she kind of helped us go back, like fly back to Washington. And I said, "Mom, you need to put him in rehab and you need to help him and you need to get out of this like, I just was like, you got to end this relationship. This is ridiculous." Well, he goes to rehab. Long story short, he goes to rehab. She moves to Washington. He gets clean and sober. He moves to Washington. He enrolls at University of Washington, graduates with highest honors in like biochemistry or something like that. Goes on to be a dentist, and life improves. Like it was just a dark period of time in his life, and she stood by him, and I and forgave him. Like it's just crazy, but all that to be said, here they are 27 years later, and they're doing quite
Yeah,
well, you
that's
know?
wild. I mean, and adversity is everywhere.
It's
I think
everywhere.
that people, I mean, you've been married for a long time. You have 3 children. People seem to think like when you find the one or a spouse or a partner or you get married, like it's all fucking rosy. And it's
It's
like, it's not. It's just not. I even think about past relationships and, being where I'm at in my life right now and just thinking about future relationships and realizing like, sometimes you just gotta fucking tough this shit out. Like you
yeah.
gotta have each other's back. That's one of the things you and we met. I don't know if we met at GrowthCon. I don't remember exactly where we met, but but I think about like Grant and Elena's relationship, right? As a couple who is mentors to both of us and millions of people around the world in various relationships. I think about Tom Billion and Lisa's relationship. I think about so many of these amazing people. And it's like, man, it's the fucking winter's coming. Like it's gonna come. But
Yeah.
guess what? It's kind of, I think about relationships so much about this adage that times make weak men make hard times make good men. And I
Yeah.
think that's the same thing about relationships, right? I truly do. more so now than ever, especially having a couple of, I won't call them bad relationships because that'd be unfair, but any relationship that doesn't end in a way that I think is in alignment and has collision of values, it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things is you got to kind of come to this conclusion if you're willing to fight through the adversity and the difficulty. And
Hmm.
so kudos to them for being able to do that, and for you and for all these people who have amazing relationships. But you know, going back, so now you're in this position, you're looking at your life, and you take some interesting turns. And I know this after high school, and I'd love for you to talk about this transition and what kind of starts to lead you down the path where more or less you are today.
Yeah. Well, I graduate high school, I go off to college. I quit college because I'm like, this is not worth going to debt for because I didn't have a college fund. My parents, you know, thinking back and in hindsight, they both were just broken people who got married.
Yeah, totally.
And they never, I mean, you think unbroken, that's what your mission is all about, is to heal, help people through the childhood trauma. My parents both had childhood trauma that they just never knew how to deal with. And then they were two broken people that got married and then really tried to make everything work. And, so I also think that's where extending grace and forgiveness really does. Like my parents did the best they could with what they had. And then they just continued to go be broken people getting married to other broken people. It's like it uh, perpetuate, like unless they go, enough is enough. We're not doing this anymore. We're going to get the healing we need for our own lives. And I can't make them do that. I'm sure that they've had healing in their life somewhere, but that's like all through high school, it was all about, okay, I gotta shake this stuff off. I gotta figure out who the hell I want to be. Graduate from college or high school. I mean, my dad got married and eloped to I don't know what it is with my parents eloping to these um places. She was a psycho woman, had to deal with that and unpack and unwrap all of that stuff too. She hated my guts. She's super jealous of me, and it's just bizarre. Like all these things, I'm like, what did I do? Like, what did I do to invite all this stuff to happen to me? But again, it was like it felt like I had to just shut all the stuff off and like figure out who I wanted to be. And so I talked about being like finding God in junior high and high school. I definitely found him like there. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna like at moment in time in my life, I wanted to be like an evangelist and teaching people how to live the Christian life. Like that was one of the things. So I went to a church. I got involved with the ministry there and I met someone and I was like, oh, I felt whole. I felt like, okay, I've done the work. I've done the healing stuff. I'm ready to get married. And um, my whole goal in life was to have a marriage that was lasting and loving and an example of you can come from brokenness, but you can also have a thriving marriage like that. I just wanted that. So I got
Mm.
married at 22 years old to a gentleman I met at church. We were married about a year after we met and was dating, and then we got married 6 months later. So about a year and a half. Well, right after we got married, things just started falling apart. Out of like felt very much out of my control. And about a year into marriage, he had an affair, and I was like, "The fuck is going on? Why is this adultery stuff like? What's going on?" Like I'd never met anyone that had all these things happen, like, uninvited, like, it just like, honestly, Michael, that was, like, what the fuck?